If you get the feeling that financial analysts are doing a really bad job of predicting Tesla's future stock performance, you're not wrong. And what's more, it's unlikely that they'll ever get it right. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So first of all, just a small little thing. I'm going to make a small announcement at the end of this video, mostly for people who are longtime fans and watch all of my videos, which by the way, thank you so much. So anyway, stick around for that at the very, very end. But on to the topic of the video. I was recently watching a Veritasium episode in which Derek talks about the 10,000 hours myth, or it's not really a myth, but just the idea that you have to do something for 10,000 hours to become an expert at it, and why that's not really enough. And it made me think about financial analysts and the reason why they are never going to predict things like Tesla stock performance pretty much ever. And honestly, they're not going to do much better than chance for predicting any stock at all. So of course, I'll leave a link to his video in the description. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But basically the idea behind this is, and a lot of people have talked about this, that if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become kind of a master of that thing. So one might think about, like, if you've driven 10,000 hours, or if you've played pool or chess or tennis or done some activity for 10,000 hours, you're a super expert, you're a master of that. And it's not quite that simple. And that's what the Veritasium episode was all about. So anyway, I'm gonna go over the 4 other things that have to happen in order for you to become a master of a given domain. And actually these things have really big consequences, especially for things like financial prediction. So the 4 things that Derek talks about that are in addition to the 10,000 hours are: number 1, a valid environment; number 2, many repetitions; number 3, timely feedback; and number 4, deliberate practice. So number 1, the valid environment, and actually Derek talks about this specifically for stock market predictions. A valid environment is something where you get appropriate feedback for a given input. So the easiest way to think about a valid environment versus an invalid one is a sport, for example, versus gambling. So a sport, like, my niece was a professional tennis player until the pandemic. She was really, really great. And the environment she practiced or played in gave her valid feedback. The valid environment was if she would hit the ball and it landed outside the lines of the tennis court, that of course was feedback that she had done a bad job. And of course, if she'd hit it in less than ideal placement, that was also feedback, etc. The difference between that and gambling is you could play roulette for the same number of hours that she played tennis, right? So let's say you did 10,000 hours of playing roulette, and so you're predicting the red or black or whatever numbers or things like that on the roulette wheel. The difference is that you're not getting valid feedback because it's just random chance where the ball ends up on the roulette wheel. So as opposed to tennis, where your actual action of swinging a racket has an effect on the environment, and that then gives you feedback, and that feedback is valid for what you're doing. With a roulette wheel, it's just a random number generator, and so there's no way to sort of get a leg up on this. Obviously, if there was, people who were expert roulette players would win lots and lots of money, and that doesn't happen. So an invalid environment that's giving you random feedback as opposed to valid feedback is never going to be able to train you to do something, no matter how long you do that. And if you think about the stock market in the short and medium term, at the very least, you're looking at a random number generator. Interestingly enough, one of the things I did in an AI class was we actually looked at Apple stock, and we had like over 2 decades worth of information, like daily stock reports on Apple stock. And the assignment was, could we predict whether Apple stock was going to be positive or negative the next day, given all of this information? So we have 2 decades, which is 20 years times 52 weeks times 5 days a week, so whatever that number is. It's a huge amount of data. And we would feed this into AI learning algorithms and see if it could predict what the future was better than chance. And as you might guess, considering the fact that I'm not super rich and sitting on a beach in Bora Bora right now, it doesn't work, because essentially what we're getting is a random number generator. Every day Apple stock could be up or down. It's a random number generator. So it's not valid feedback that we're getting from this in order to train ourselves to do a better job, or in order to train an AI to do a better job. So number 1 problem for these financial analysts is that they don't have a valid environment. The stock market is not giving them proper feedback. So they make a prediction and they get feedback, but that feedback is random. It's not actually connected to their prediction at all. So that doesn't allow them to make predictions and to train themselves to get better at it. But wait, there's more. Number 2 on the list is many repetitions. And you may say, well, these these guys are, every single day they're predicting the stock every day. Let's just make it really simple. All they have to do is predict up or down on a given stock in a day. And yeah, they're doing it once per day, 5 days a week for 50 weeks out of the year or something along those lines. So that's a reasonable number of repetitions, but it's not that many. If you think about the number of times they predict whether Apple stock or Tesla stock or whatever, it goes up or down versus the number of times my niece hit a tennis ball while she was practicing, from the time she was 2 or 3 years old up to the time that she was in her late 20s and retired, she did that multiple thousands of times per day probably. These people are doing this like once per day. So she's got like a 1 or 2 or 3,000 fold, like times, not percent, but 3,000 times advantage over the people who are making these financial predictions. That is a huge advantage when it comes to becoming an expert in a topic. Number 3 is timely feedback, and this is a really interesting one. Let's take me predicting stock futures versus me learning how to climb, boulder, rock climb, etc. I will get immediate and very timely feedback if I climb a route incorrectly because I will fall off of that. And that will be scary, or it will be, depressing because I didn't make it or something like that. So that's immediate feedback. It's like you put your hand in the wrong place, you balance incorrectly, you fall off, you get negative feedback like instantly, right? So it's an instant feedback loop. So you can get better relatively quickly doing that. The problem for financial analysts, including me, if I try to predict what Tesla stock is going to do a week from now or a month from now or something, is that it's not very timely feedback. There's a long period of time between when you make the prediction and when you actually get feedback for that. And I've actually talked about this with Joe Justice. If you haven't seen my video on this, definitely check it out. He talks about digital self-management. The big thing that digital self-management allows at Tesla is it allows people to get much, much more rapid feedback. So he's saying that the traditional role of a manager, that's a person who's, in between the worker and the CEO who sets the goals and the worker actually does the work. The manager gives feedback to the worker and says, yes, you're doing a good job, or no, you're not. But that feedback could come on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, or even if it's a daily basis, it's still way too slow. What you want is that instantaneous feedback. So, right, the digital self-management, what it does is as the worker does something, it's giving them a thumbs up or a thumbs down instantly, which allows people to become much better at it. So the trouble is that financial analysts and financial amateurs like me have these long periods of time between when we make predictions and when something actually happens. And especially if you say like a week or 2 weeks, what does that actually mean? Does it mean 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 15 and a half days, right? What is the exact amount of time? So there's all this wiggle room. So we're not getting very timely feedback about our predictions. And that causes people not to become experts either. And then the fourth and really important element of practice is deliberate practice. So let's say as a rock climber, I got good at climbing a certain type of climb. And all I did was I just climbed that over and over and over and over and over again. I could do 10,000 hours of climbing that same route and I'm never going to become an expert. Derek actually talks about people driving. He says, people spend 50 or 100 hours becoming pretty good drivers. And most people just stop there. They're like, I'm not going to drive in bad traffic. I'm not going to drive in really ugly weather. I'm not going to drive at high speeds or go crazy or anything like that. So they cap it. They're practicing, right? They're driving. I've driven 10,000 hours easily in my life, but I haven't driven Formula One or NASCAR or something. So I'm never going to improve to that level because I'm not deliberately practicing at the edge of my ability. So there's something that my niece as a professional tennis player was doing, right? She was constantly practicing and playing in tournaments at the absolute edge of her ability versus people who were also doing that. So they were becoming experts by really, really pushing the envelope constantly. And the problem here for financial analysts, as you might imagine, is that they get pretty comfortable, right? They're sitting there and they make predictions and everything, and they're in a comfort zone. They predict the same stocks over and over again, and it's not very deliberate. They just kind of do the thing by rote. And I would say it's also really important that they don't get strong negative feedback. A financial analyst is going on to CNBC or Fox Business or Yahoo Finance or whatever it is. They make these predictions and they take home a paycheck. Who cares if they get it right or wrong, right? It's sort of like a weather person. The weather person gets up in front and they say like, it's gonna rain tomorrow with 60% odds, and then it doesn't rain. They still collect their paycheck, no big deal. They go home, they're happy, they feed the family, and everybody is happy. If on the other hand, the weather forecaster said it's gonna rain tomorrow and I'm gonna give it 80% odds, and then it didn't rain the next day and they actually got zapped by an electric zapper the next day, that is going to give them much more deliberate deliberate practice, they're going to have a lot more feedback about the fact that they didn't do well, and they're going to care about that. So if, for example, these financial analysts were just publicly flogged or given zaps of electricity, and I'm not encouraging this in actual fact, but I'm just saying this as a for instance, if they were given really, really strong negative feedback that really, really hurt them, or maybe people took away their paychecks or whatever, but if they were really punished for getting it wrong, I guarantee you they would work really, really hard to get it right. And what they might do is not predict 500 stocks, they might limit it down to just a few that they feel pretty strongly they understand better than anything else. And that would cause them to become more expert in predicting those stocks at the expense of not predicting all the other ones. So when we look at the fact that there isn't a valid environment for stock predictions, at least in the short or medium term, financial analysts don't do that many repetitions, they don't get very timely feedback, and they don't deliberately practice. And this is, again, statistically overall. I'm sure there are some analysts who are a little bit different and try harder than others. But just overall, those four things work against them. So even if these financial analysts have 10 or 20 or 30,000 hours of experience, they're never going to become the domain experts we think that they are, and therefore we really shouldn't trust them as much as we do. And I think that's important for people to keep in mind. All right, thank you so much for watching. My little mini announcement here is just a scheduling announcement. You may have noticed over the past couple of weeks, the number of videos that I've done per week has gone down, and that's because school is ramping back up again right now, and so obviously I have to concentrate on that first and foremost. So I'll probably be doing, on the order of 2 to 3 videos a week as opposed to like 1 per day. So I just wanted to let you all know. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate everybody watching. And of course, thank you so much for liking the video, which is super important to YouTube's algorithm. And of course, for subscribing to this channel. Thank you. And speaking of support, I especially appreciate my Patreon support. Thank you all so much for everything you do for me. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget that we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a Powerwall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.